بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله وحده والصلاة والسلام على من لا نبي بعده أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. In history, when the prophets and messengers came to the nations and they received their call of La ilaha illallah, the people demanded miracles. They wanted ayat, they wanted signs. Even the disciples of Isa alayhi salatu wasalam asked Isa alayhi salam to go ask Allah subhanahu jalla wa ala to send down a table spread. The people of Thamud asked Salih, they said, you see this rock here? Yes, you've been calling us to worship one God, and our forefathers have been worshiping idols. We're not ready to leave their way of life. See this rock here? They lived in a rocky terrain. See this rock here? Make a she-camel come out of this rock. So they asked amazing signs. So when the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam came, they also asked the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam for miracles and signs. They said, "Lawla yukallimuna Allah." Why doesn't Allah speak to us? Bring us an ayah, a sign, a miracle. Make the earth burst with springs. Why don't we see you fly in the sky? Why don't you make your house into a treasure? Why don't we have gardens with rivers in between? Why don't you bring us Allah and the angels? Bring us these signs. Now Allah subhanahu jalla wa ala, for the disciples of Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, sent down the table spread. For Thamud, he made a she-camel appear, a beautiful she-camel appear. For Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, ayat and signs were sent. For the various prophets and messengers, miracles and ayat were sent. But the requests of Quraysh, the requests that came from the people of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, were not granted. They asked for many signs. Allah subhanahu jalla wa ala did not grant one of their signs. And that was because Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is a rahmah for the worlds. The not answering of Allah subhanahu to the request of Quraysh for miracles and signs was a rahmah, a mercy from Allah subhanahu jalla wa ala. That is because if we look, what does the sign and miracle entail? If we look at Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, when he asked Allah subhanahu jalla wa ala for the sign that the disciples were asking him for a table spread, Allah subhanahu jalla wa ala mentioned, he said that I will definitely send it. But whoever disbelieves thereafter, I will punish them with a punishment that will never have been given to anyone in the worlds. A punishment that will be unique. When they asked Salih alayhi salam for the she-camel, Allah subhanahu gave them the she-camel. And they were told that the she-camel was supposed to be left alone to roam around and drink and eat wherever it wants. And they were not supposed to touch it. But they hamstrung the she-camel and Allah subhanahu jalla wa ala destroyed them. So these miracles, when people request them and they ask, they don't really know what they're asking for. They don't know what they're getting into. It was a rahmah, a mercy from Allah subhanahu, because the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is a mercy to the worlds, that when the Quraysh asked for miracles, they asked for certain requests, Allah subhanahu jalla wa ala did not grant it to them. As Allah subhanahu jalla wa ala said, and they asked him, send down angels. وَلَوْ أَنزَلْنَا مَلَكًا لَقُضِيَ الْأَمْرِ. Allah subhanahu jalla wa ala said, if we were to send down an angel as a sign so they can see the angels, the matter would have been decided. It would have been over. In other words, if the angels came down and they did not believe, right after that there would be punishment, destruction. My dear brothers and sisters, if you had a choice right now, if I were to say to you, behind door A, there is a book, and behind door B, to my left, there is an angel in its original form standing there. Which door would you like to open? Raise your hand if you want to open door A. Raise your hand if you would like to open door B, the angels. Right? Most of us would like to open door B. See an angel with wings, mashallah. Look, all you guys are smiling already. It's going to happen. It's going to get all nice and beautiful. But this is exactly what the people wanted. They wanted to see angels. They wanted the miracle so they themselves can fly in the sky. They wanted to see the Prophet ﷺ flying. They wanted to see springs bursting, things turning into gold. They wanted to see all these amazing things. And this was their Hollywood, where they wanted to see this, a lot of effects, the real effects, 3D effects and all these effects in real life. They wanted to see it. But the message in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not responding to the request of Quraysh was a serious message. The message was that you're not going to get the miracles you're asking for like the previous nations, because we have already given you the Qur'an. And the Qur'an is the greatest miracle. The Qur'an is greater than what's behind door B, which would be an angel. The Qur'an is greater than us all of a sudden flying in the sky. The Qur'an is greater than our houses turning into being filled with treasures. It's greater than any of the miracles that Quraysh had asked the Prophet ﷺ, materialistic miracles that they asked the Prophet ﷺ to bring about. The message was that you already have the greatest miracle, which is the Qur'an. And if you're not believing in the Qur'an, the greatest miracle, any other miracle that will come after that would be less, and that wouldn't make you believe anyway. So if one doesn't believe in the greatest miracle, which is the Qur'an, they rejected the Qur'an, there's no benefit. There's no point in sending another miracle. There's no point seeing the Prophet Muhammad flying in the sky, or they themselves having the ability to fly. Because even after that, they will not believe, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَلَوْ فَتَحْنَا عَلَيْهِمْ بَابًا مِّنَ السَّمَاءِ. If we were to open a gate from the heavens, and then they would ascend and fly up to the heavens. Imagine we're flying in the heavens. What would they say? إِنَّمَا سُكِّرَتْ أَبْصَارُنَا. Our eyes have been dazzled, but we are a people that have been bewitched. This would be their response. They wouldn't believe that they're actually flying. This is not real. This is fake. This is an illusion. We're not really flying in the sky, going up to the heavens. This is not really happening. That even as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, if He were to give them these miracles, they still would not believe. So the message here is, if the Qur'an is not good enough for you, if the Qur'an is something that doesn't bring about iman in your heart, there's nothing. There's nothing in this universe that will be able to bring that about. And as for Muslims, I want us to ask ourselves this question tonight, because the conference is about the Qur'an and our relationship with the Qur'an. Do we feel that the Qur'an is the greatest miracle? Do we feel that the Qur'an is greater than angels in the thousands descending from the heavens? Do we feel that the Qur'an is a greater miracle than if I were to touch this podium, it would turn into gold? Do we feel that the Qur'an is a greater miracle than the earth bursting into springs? Do we have this relationship with the book of Allah subhanahu? Do we have this approach and love and excitement as we would be excited to open the door and see an angel? Are we that excited when we open the book of Allah subhanahu jalla wa ala? This is a question I want us to think about tonight. And the problem is, if we don't feel that it is the greatest miracle, if we don't feel that it is the greatest thing that has been given to us, we will abandon the Qur'an. We will not benefit from the Qur'an. We start looking for solutions elsewhere. The Qur'an becomes a book that is written full of suggestions, but we go to psychiatrists, we go to scientists, we go to psychologists, we go to experts. I'm not saying we should not go to them, But we don't go to them at the expense of the book of Allah subhanahu jalla wa ala. Because Allah subhanahu has mentioned that the Qur'an is a shifa, is a cure. So the first remedy should come from the book of Allah, the Qur'an. My dear brothers and sisters, our relationship to the Qur'an, when we open it and we read it, how do we feel? Allah subhanahu said, لو أنزلنا هذا القرآن على جبل لرأيته خاشعا متصدعا من خشية الله. That if this same Qur'an were to be revealed on a hard mountain, now Allah subhanahu chose the mountain and not the sun or anything else, because the mountain is it's very close for us to see. We can go, we can feel it. The sun is something that we can't really feel it. There's no sensory capabilities there. The mountain, we can feel it, we can see it, we can see how tough and strong it is. Jalla wa ala said if the Qur'an was to be revealed upon the mountain, you would see it khashi'a. Khushu' means you will be humbled. If something so hard as the mountain can be humbled by the Qur'an, why are some of our hearts not humbled by the book of Allah subhanahu jalla wa ala? And the secret is in the same ayah. I'm going to give you 3 elements tonight, or this evening, that can affect your relationship with the book of Allah. And is derived from this very verse. Allah subhanahu jalla wa ala did not say, لَرَأَيْتَهُ خَائِفًا. He didn't say you will see the mountain with khawf, with fear. He said khashi'an, it will be humbled. Khushu', this humility, when a person is humbled, it happens not out of ignorance. Khawf is a fear that happens when a person is afraid of something, they may not have knowledge about it. Khashiyah is a fear that comes with knowledge. And when a person has khashiyah, fear with knowledge, they develop khushu'. They become humble. Khushu' basically means that the person's heart is at rest, at peace. It's connected. When he's reading the book of Allah, he's connected with Allah subhanahu jalla wa ala. The heart is not wavering. He's not reading the ayats. He's not in a rush to get it over with. It's Jum'ah. Let me read Surah Al-Kahf. I got to go have my burger. Let me just finish these surahs real fast. I'm going to just whiz through them. Or the heart is wavering, thinking about someone else or something else. What I have to do tonight. What do I have to do later on? But the person who's reading the book of Allah has khushu'. It's at rest. The heart is at rest. For the heart to be at rest, there has to be this knowledge. Which means for us to have this relationship, this khushu' in our hearts, knowledge is important. And we're going to talk about 3 elements tonight that are intellectual approaches to the Qur'an. For me to open the book of Allah and read it and be affected, I have to change my intellectual approach to the Qur'an. It's not a book of incantations. We've been raised to open the Qur'an, to read the book as if it's a book of incantations. We're reading stuff. We have no idea what we're reading. But Allah subhanahu wants us to have an intellectual approach to the Qur'an. And the minimum intellectual approach is to understand what it says. Allah subhanahu jalla wa ala addresses ulul albab. This is the first intellectual element I'm going to give you tonight. To be amongst ulul albab. Albab is an intellectual thought that is free from any prejudice and any bias. That if you're going to look at the Qur'an and read the Qur'an, it has to be done without any prejudice, without any bias, without looking at the Qur'an through the lens of humanism or the lens of anything else, or individualism, without the lens of anything else. You're looking at the Qur'an and you're analyzing the Qur'an for what it is, stripped from any other influences. This is the thought process of the ulul albab. And this is why Allah subhanahu jalla wa ala, when He mentions certain things in the Qur'an, He addresses ulul albab for those things where you have to strip and take off your prejudices and biases. Like Allah subhanahu jalla wa ala says, وَلَكُمْ فِي الْقِصَاصِ حَيَاءٌ. That in retribution, capital punishment for murder, and that retribution, there is life. Ya ulul albab. O people of Albab. A person just looking at it without analyzing it, a person who's preconditioned, a person who has a set of biases, a person who has prejudice will say, how can you take the life of another person? This is harmful and harsh punishment. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is addressing Ulul Albab, that if you were to look and analyze this crime and punishment scenario without being preconditioned by your culture or other influences, you will come to the conclusion that there is haya, there is life in this method. So Allah addresses Ulul Albab. Number two, the second intellectual approach to the Qur'an is a tafakkur. What does a tafakkur mean? Tafakkur means to think, and not just think, but think and come to a conclusion. Because it's possible for you to come to a conclusion. You know, when you talk to the atheists, they say, it's possible, yeah. It's possible that that could have happened. It's possible God could have created the universe. It's also possible that no one created the universe. It's also possible, and we don't know, and you don't know, and because I don't know, you shouldn't know, and because you don't know, nobody knows. We don't know. Tafakkur means that you arrive to a decision or result or a conclusion because the evidence is available. And this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes Al-Walid ibn al-Mughira, إِنَّهُ فَكَّرَ وَقَدَّرَ. Fakkara from tafkir. He thought about, who is Muhammad? What is this Qur'an? He was thinking about it. And he came to a decision or conclusion, but if you notice in the ayats, he was influenced. So he was not amongst the Ulul Albab. He was influenced by his prejudice because he realized, as he mentioned himself, that this is not the statement of a man. There's nothing more beautiful than it. He realized that, he affirmed it, but now he couldn't go back to his leaders and tell them, look, I believe this is the book of Allah. This is nothing that a man could produce. So he was influenced and he was affected. And then he said, إِنْ هَذَا إِلَّا سِحْرٌ يُؤْثَرٌ. That this is just imitated magic. إِنْ هَذَا إِلَّا قَوْلُ الْبَشَرِ. This is the saying of man. So he did come to a decision, but it was an influence decision because he was not amongst the Ulul Albab. But what I'm trying to draw out here is tafakkur means you think about something, but then you come to a conclusion. That thought process leads you to a conclusion, leads you to a result. So number one, Ulul Albab, your intellectual approach, you strip it from any prejudices. Regardless of what you were told and what you learned, what you were conditioned in society, this is right, this is wrong. You look at the Qur'an, you let the Qur'an speak for itself. Number two, you make tafakkur, you think about things, and you arrive to a conclusion. You don't leave life open, maybe, possible, could be, should be, who knows, maybe. We come to a conclusion. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala used both of these intellectual approaches together when He said, إِنَّ فِي خَلْقِ السَّمَوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَاخْتِلَافِ اللَّيْلِ وَالنَّهَارِ لَآيَاتٍ لِأُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that surely in the creation of the heavens and the earth, and the variation of the night and the day, there are signs for who? For ulul albab, people who are not allowing their intellectual process to be influenced by bias or prejudice. So someone, even the atheist, if he's sincere and not biased and not prejudiced, he will come to the conclusion that in the heavens and the earth, this has to have, the heavens and the earth had to have come about by a creator. الذين يذكرون الله قياما وقعودا وعلى جنوبهم ويتفكرون في خلق السماوات والأرض. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says these are people who remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala standing and sitting and when they're laying down. ويتفكرون في خلق السماوات والأرض. And then they think about the creation of the heavens and the earth. But wait a minute. Allah already said إن في خلق السماوات والأرض. Allah already said in the creation of the heavens and the earth there are signs. Why is He mentioning the creation of the heavens and the earth a second time? Is this redundancy? The first time the creation of the heavens and the earth was mentioned addressing ulul albab, people who strip their intellectual process and thinking from prejudice and bias. And the second time He mentions the creation of the heavens and the earth, He mentions it with وَيَتَفَكَّرُونَ وَالتَّفَكُّرْ. Meaning, now that you thought about the heavens and the earth, and you have stripped it away from any bias or prejudice or influences, now you have to make tafakkur. When you think further, you have to come to a conclusion. You have to come to a decision, or there has to be a result. And this is why right after that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives the result. رَبَّنَا مَا خَلَقْتَ هَذَا بَاطِلًا سُبْحَانَكَ فَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ. O our Lord, you have not created all this in vain. A person who is amongst ulul albab and makes tafakkur comes to the conclusion we have a purpose. We're not in vain. We're not just living and dying for no purpose or no reason. Subhanak, any other conclusion means that you are deficient. That's why we say Subhanak. If anyone arrives at any other conclusion besides this, it's an incorrect conclusion and it's a belittlement of Allah subhanahu jalla wa ala. That's why we say Subhanaka faqina adhab an-nar, save us from the fire. That Subhanak, you're free from all defects. If someone comes to another conclusion, they're ascribing defects to you. So here Allah subhanahu used ulul albab and tafakkur together. The third intellectual approach is tadabbur. Adubur or adbar. Adbar means to go back or what's behind something. Allah subhanahu says, أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ الْقُرْآنَ أَمْ عَلَى قُلُوبٍ أَقْفَالُهَا. Allah subhanahu said, do they not make tadabbur of the Qur'an? Now in English, tafakkur is translated as thinking, pondering, reflecting. Tadabbur is translated as thinking, pondering, reflecting. In English, we don't see the difference. But tadabbur means that you go behind the ayah. In other words, the ayah has a face value, what it means on the surface, but then what's behind it? It's the 360 degrees approach. You look at what is behind the ayah, what is at the end of the ayah, what is the beginning of the ayah, not just at the surface. And this is why a person who makes tadabbur, this intellectual approach of the ayat, they come up with reflections that are at times not found in any tafsir. This is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ الْقُرْآنَ أَمْ عَلَى قَلُوبٍ أَقْفَالُهَا. Do they not make tadabbur? Do they not take a 360-degree approach towards the Qur'an? Or are there locks on their hearts? If you make tadabbur, these locks are opened, and Allah blesses the heart by seeing hikam, wisdom, reflection in the ayat that you may come across that is not mentioned in any tafsir. So these three approaches, if we apply these three approaches to the Qur'an, it will not make our heart draped. It will develop khushu' in the heart. And for that to happen, my dear brothers and sisters, for that to happen, it means, number one, we have to be excited about the Qur'an. If you're going to leave tonight, I want you to leave with at least this one message. And I want you to think about it. Am I excited about the Qur'an? When I go home, am I excited to go and open the book of Allah? When I get up in the morning, am I excited to just read one more page of the Qur'an? When I have 1 hour free, I was supposed to go meet somebody and then it was an hour delay. I just ended up with 1 hour free all of a sudden. Is this where I bring out my smartphone and get on Facebook? Or I check my email 50 times for that 1 hour and I'm just checking over anything in the inbox, anything in the inbox, anything in the inbox. Or I look into my Twitter account. If you want to see if Allah loves you, you can just check from that 1 hour. Because if you bring out your smartphone and open the Qur'an and start reading it, yes, I got 1 hour free. I'm excited to read the words of Allah. That means Allah subhanahu loves you. That means you love the book of Allah subhanahu. That means you're excited about the Qur'an. That means you regard it greater than anything else. If not, if we go days on and days on without opening the book of Allah, there's a problem with our heart. There's a problem with understanding what this Qur'an is about. So if you're going to leave tonight, leave with this question in your mind. And if you can leave with this question in your mind, I want you to do one thing. From tonight, I want you to make a promise to yourself. Just like you have time fixed for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and some people add brunch and supper and a whole bunch of other stuff in between. Just like you have fixed times for those meals or eating habits, and you have fixed times to go to college, you have fixed times to go to work, every day, if you're excited about the Qur'an, every day you should have a fixed time to open the book of Allah. That from Fajr, after I pray Fajr, half an hour, I'm not going to do anything. My finger's not going to go to the Facebook icon. It's going to go straight there. Oh, wait, let me just keep turning and turning. Oh, there's the Qur'an app. It's not on the first screen. It's somewhere down the 20th screen. I'm going to press the Qur'an app, and that half an hour, I've fixed this time. For some people, it could be in the morning. For some people, it could be in the night. For some people, it could be at their lunch break. But I want you tonight, right now, to fix that time and your intention in your mind. Then I want you to do three things. I don't know how we have time for everything else. This Qur'an has so much to do with the Qur'an. Number one, this is assuming now you know how to read it properly, you know tajweed. That's once we've done all the prereqs there. Number one, you want to have a portion that's divided into 3 times, right? The first portion, you're going to read the Qur'an, just read. The second portion is where you're going to read an ayah and look at the tafsir. Read the tafsir. What does this ayah mean? I've been reading this over and over again. What does it mean? And the third portion, I'm going to start memorizing a little bit. Maybe just 1 ayah a week. I'm not telling you to be half of the Qur'an, just 1 ayah a week. You know, this is an interesting ayah. I want to just memorize it. How many times have we read the Qur'an from beginning till end in 1 year? 600 some pages. How many times have we read that? How much content do we read in 1 year online? Are we excited about the Qur'an? So these 3 things I want us to mark it down. This is what the believer should be busy in. But dear brothers and sisters, a person either reads the Qur'an with tadabbur, tafakkur, with these intellectual approaches, or they don't. And if they're not, they're missing out on a lot. I guarantee if you do this every day, you will start feeling lighter. Your brain will feel cleared up. You will feel less stressed. Things in your life will start to change. Because imagine, for every letter there's 10 hasana. You're improving your scale of good deeds. You will get to the point where you will not be able to live without opening the Qur'an. You'll get to the point, if you were not able to open the Qur'an for 1 day, it will bother you. And that's when we start loving the words of Allah. Umar radiallahu anhu, when he would enter his house, the first thing he would do is go to the Mus'haf. Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu, when he would hold the Mus'haf, he said, Kalamu Rabbi, Kalamu Rabbi. Look at the love. The words of my Lord. The words of my Lord. It was real for them. These are the actual words of Allah subhanahu jalla wa ala. Allah subhanahu jalla wa ala mentions, وَنُنَزِّلُ مِنَ الْقُرْآنِ مَا هُوَ شِفَاءٌ وَرَحْمَةٌ لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ. That will reveal of the Qur'an what is a cure, physical diseases, spiritual diseases. You know, so many people call our centers, brother, I think my sister has a jinn, a shaitan, I think this person is possessed, and that person is possessed, and this person is possessed, that person is possessed. The greatest weapon against possession is the Qur'an. Not nasheeds, not music, Qur'an. When the Qur'an is recited, the shayateen flee. When music is being played, it's party time. That's when the shayateen come. Music attracts shayateen, and the Qur'an repels the shayateen but attracts the angels. The Qur'an is a cure for these diseases. So listen, please, can you find someone to do ruqyah? I said the best person to do ruqyah is you yourself. Allah's given you the cure, you are the doctor. Open the book of Allah, read it over and over and over again. You will be able to cure yourself by the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Wa rahmah, and it's a mercy. Imagine our lives without this additional mercy. We're losing out on mercy by not opening the book of Allah, reading it, reflecting it, understanding it, being distant from it. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said something very scary right after that. وَلَا يَزِيدُ الظَّالِمِينَ إِلَّا خَسَارًا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then said, He does not increase the dhalimeen, the wrongdoers, except in loss. What's the relationship between this and the first part of the ayah? The message here is that for the believers who are excited about the Qur'an, who employ these intellectual approaches to the Qur'an, who love the Qur'an for them will be shifa and rahmah. But a person who commits dhulm, wrong towards the Qur'an itself will be nothing but a state of loss. It will increase the person in loss. What are some of these types of dhulm towards the Qur'an? Number one, Allah has revealed it Qur'anan Arabiyan la'allakum taqilun. Has revealed it in Arabic Qur'an so that you may understand. Meaning the Qur'an can only be properly understood in the Arabic language. Translations do no justice. And for those of you who've learned Arabic, you know that when you read the Qur'an and its translations, then when you read the Qur'an in Arabic, it was as if you read a completely different book. And then when you continued your knowledge in the Arabic language and learned al-balagha, the science of eloquence, and then you read the Qur'an again, it was as if you read a completely different book once again. What are we missing? Here, the first dhulm that we do wrong is when we don't learn the Arabic language. Seriously. If our boss said to us, look, you gotta learn Spanish in 7 months because we have a client, a company that's coming in, and you're gonna have to deal with them in Spanish. And you get a $20,000 bonus raise. We will learn Spanish. Not 6 months, 3 months. Allah has sent us the Qur'an, His words, the greatest miracle. If we can't benefit from it, there's nothing in the world that can benefit. And this is why I always say, either we learn from the verse or we learn from the universe. They're both verses. Either we learn from the verse, which is rahmah, or we learn from the universe, which is painful. We learn from life's teachings and events. A lot of the Muslim world today have abandoned the verses. There are thousands and millions of people, if you open up the Qur'an and say, what does Iyaka nasta'een mean? Well, what? Or what are we supposed to do in XY situation? The Qur'an says this, but we're doing something else. So we're learning now from the universe, meaning trial and error. We will fail, and we have problems in the world, and we learn, oh, you know what, this didn't work, let's try that. You know what, that didn't work, let's try something else. So either we learn from the verses, which is filled with rahmah and mercy, or we learn from the universe, which is life's events, through trial and error, and that's very painful. So the first is to learn the Arabic language. What is the Quran saying? If I'm excited about the Quran, I want to say, you know what? I want to spend the next 2 years, I'm just going to learn the Arabic language. I'm going to spend 1 hour a day just to learn the Arabic language. Number two, dhulm towards the Quran. I may know the Arabic language. And when I say learn the Arabic language, I don't just mean knowing how to read without meaning, right? Someone will say, you know, mashallah, he's hafiz Quran, right? But you open one ayah, he has no idea. The Quran was not revealed for us to memorize without understanding. The second part of dhulm is if we're reading it and we don't stop and we don't reflect upon it, we don't think about it, we don't look at the tafsir. Third is we don't apply it in our lives, we don't allow it to change us. And if this is our relationship with the Quran, there's khasara, there will be loss in our lives. And we look in the Muslim world today, a great part of it, there's so much painful loss. All we have to do is turn back to the Quran. It's the greatest calamity that we have the greatest miracle in our pockets, in our smartphones. In our homes, we have the greatest miracle. In the time of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they had the greatest miracle. Quraysh had the greatest miracle in front of them. Not just the greatest miracle, the Qur'an. They had the best reciter to tell them this Qur'an, to recite to them this Qur'an. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَإِذَا قَرَأْتَ الْقُرْآنَ جَعَلْنَا بَيْنَكَ وَبَيْنَ الَّذِينَ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْآخِرَةِ حِجَابًا مَسْتُورًا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, now here's the greatest miracle. The greatest reciter is reciting it to them. Hopefully they'll get some mercy and some rahmah and some cures. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that when you recite the Qur'an to those who don't believe in the akhirah, we have made between you and them a hijab and mastura, a veil. So the benefit and the rahmah and the shifa is not transcending and going to them. It's blocked. Have we created our own veils? We have the miracle right here. We have it in our homes. The greatest calamity is when we have the greatest miracle and we don't fall in love with it. And we're not excited about it. And we don't read it daily. That we're not addicted to it. Can you imagine the Sahaba were asking the Prophet ﷺ, but I could complete the Quran in 1 week. I could do it in 3 days. I could do it even less than that. The Prophet ﷺ had to stop them from reading so much Quran. No, don't do it in less than 3 days. Why? Because you won't understand what you're reading. Imagine these were the people whom Allah granted success on the earth. These were the people whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed. So my dear brothers and sisters, it's a great calamity if we have this great miracle and we don't take benefit from it. We don't have to look anywhere else. We don't have to look towards United Nations, NATO, the rest of the world. It's right here. It's the greatest miracle. And I end with this. Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah said, you should look for your heart in 3 instances. Number 1, when you're reciting the Qur'an. Number 2, when you're making dhikr. What's the condition of your heart during that time? It's like, let me finish quickly. Like, you know, when we pray in the masjid, in the jama'ah, right? We pray the salah, and as soon as the imam says, Assalamu alaikum rahmatullah, Assalamu alaikum rahmatullah. Some people shoot up so quick, and you're not even finishing Assalamu alaikum rahmatullah. You're turning to the left, you look, God, the guy's at the door already. Just so quick to get up. But look at the Prophet ﷺ. Even after salah is finished, he's sitting, saying Subhanallah 33 times, saying Alhamdulillah 33 times, saying Allahu Akbar 33 times, making dhikr, not moving from his spot of prayer. It's like the guy in the movie theater, right, who saw that movie 10 times already, but goes back to see it again. He's sitting in the seat in the movie theater, and the movie's over, and he's not moving because he just enjoyed that movie, and he wishes it wasn't over, that he can go on and on. This is the case of the believer. When he finishes his salah, he wishes it's not over. Why is it over? I'm not moving. I want to sit here. Why is it over? I'm going to sit here, make more dhikr. This is the condition of the heart. As opposed to the ones like, let me finish it quick and I'm jetting out of here. Look for your heart during these 3 instances. Number 1, when you recite the book of Allah, the Qur'an, what's your heart's condition? Check. Be a doctor of yourself. Number 2, when you make the dhikr of Allah. You know, some people, they have those bees, they're making dhikr, and at the same time, they're having business conversation in the form, hey, wallah, yes. And they have the conversation going, and the dhikr is going on too. How? I don't know. What's your focus? And when you say, La ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lahu lahul mulku wal hamdu wa huwa ala kulli shay'in qadir. Are you talking to Allah when you say that? Do you feel like you're talking to Allah, or are we talking to the air? What's the condition of the heart? And number 3, this is important. When you're alone. Because when a person's alone, they remember their loved ones. When you're by yourself and you have a moment of privacy, do you think of Allah subhanahu? Do you speak to Allah Azza wa Jal? Do you remember Him with adhkar? What do you do in your moments when you're by yourself? Ibn al-Qayyim then says, if a person in these three instances doesn't see his heart in a proper condition, then he doesn't have a heart. Let him find a heart. Let us be doctors of our souls and of our hearts. Let us not drape our heart from this beautiful miracle, the greatest miracle of all times. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to lift from this ummah its painful times. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us lovers of the Qur'an. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us amongst those who put portions every day, dedicated, without compromise, to the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us amongst those who increase our understanding and implementation of the Qur'an. Allah is hearing our words in this dua. May He accept. Innahu sami'u dua. Wa sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. Enjoy your snowy New Jersey. We didn't get any snow up in New York, but see y'all inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.